The sky above Elia 9 was darkening quickly as the enormous shadow of the trend warship descended toward the planet's surface. The roar of its engines was deafening, drowning out everything else. Ilara felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, the very air thick with the weight of impending danger. She had only moments to act. Krykar was not the only threat now. The Trend fleet was descending, and if she didn't find a way to stop them, Elianine, along with countless other worlds, would be doomed. Ilara stepped out of the mining complex. The artifact still clutched tightly in her hand. The energy within it hummed like a heartbeat, a constant reminder of how much was at stake. The warship above was not just a ship, was a symbol of the Trend's relentless conquest, a weapon that could annihilate anything in its path. And she had the one thing that could stop it. Or so she hoped. She turned toward the horizon, where she saw Rykar standing, watching her. His massive form was silhouetted against the warship, his red eyes glowing faintly. For a moment, they locked gaze as two enemies, standing on the brink of something much larger than either of them could control. Ilara could see the conflict within him. He wasn't just a soldier. There was something more to him. Something torn between duty and the unexpected realization that the Trend's survival wasn't the only thing that mattered. Humanity was standing on the edge of extinction, and so was his own species. Ilara didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. Rykar had already come to the same conclusion. There was no easy solution to this conflict. The artifact in her hand was the key, but what did it unlock? Could it bring peace, or would it bring only more destruction? "I don't want to fight you," Ilara said finally, her voice steady, despite the fear in her chest. "But I can't let you destroy everything we've built." Rykar remained silent, but the weight of his eyes softened just a little. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low. "The Trend are not just conquerors. We are the last of our kind. If we don't take this planet, if we don't take that artifact, we will die." Ilara glanced down at the artifact, her mind spinning with the weight of what he had just said. The Trend weren't just invading to conquer, they were fighting for their very survival. But that didn't make their actions right. Humanity couldn't just give in to their demands. She had to find a way to stop them, but she also had to consider Rykar's words. The Trend weren't mindless destroyers. They were desperate, clinging to a dying legacy. "The artifact can help both of us," Ilara said. "But not like this. We don't have to keep fighting. If we destroy each other, we're both lost." Rykar's expression hardened. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything. You don't understand what we've sacrificed." Ilara's heart ached. She could see the pain in his eyes, the scars of war and loss that were etched into his soul. He wasn't just a killer. He was a soldier who had been broken by his own people's desperation. But she couldn't let that stop her from doing what needed to be done. She couldn't let him destroy humanity's future just because the Trend had lost theirs. "I understand more than you think," she said quietly. "I've seen the destruction. I've studied the ruins of your past. But what you're asking is too high a price." Before Rykar could respond, the warship's engines roared even louder, and Ilara knew they didn't have much time. The ship was descending rapidly, its guns already primed and ready for a devastating attack. She could hear the hum of the weapons charging up, and she knew that once the warship reached the surface, there would be no stopping it. "I don't want to be your enemy, Rykar," Ilara said, stepping forward. "But I will protect humanity." Rykar's gaze flickered. His hand hovered over his weapon, but he didn't raise it. The warship was nearly on top of them now, and time was running out. "I'll give you one chance," Ilara said, her voice firm. "We can stop this. Together. But you need to help me." His gaze darting toward the descending ship, and then back to Ilara. The hesitation in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He was torn. He didn't want to do this any more than she did, but his loyalty to his people ran deep. It wasn't a decision he could make lightly. "I'm listening," he said finally. Ilara nodded. "We can use the artifact to disable their weapons. It's our only shot, but we need to get close enough to the ship to make it work." "If we fail, we won't fail," Rykar interrupted, his voice more determined than before. He stepped forward, and for the first time, there was a sense of unity between them. It wasn't about species anymore, it was about survival, they ran together, racing toward the open field where the warship was descending. As they moved, Ilara focused on the artifact in her hand, its energy thrumming with power. She could feel its weight pressing against her palm, but it wasn't just a tool anymore. It was part of her, a piece of herself, guiding her. She could sense that it was alive, that it was more than just an object. It was a key to something greater. As they neared the ship, Rykar activated his personal shield, allowing them to get closer without being incinerated by the ship's weapons. The Tren warship was now only a few hundred feet above the ground, its massive guns visible and charging with deadly energy. The ground beneath them trembled with the power of the ship's weapons. "We need to get inside," Rykar said, his voice steady. "I know," Ilara said, her eyes scanning the massive ship. "We'll have to climb."
Ow.
There was a narrow access point on the underside of the warship. They reached it quickly, Ilar's heart racing with every step. The Tren were powerful, but they were not invincible, and the artifact was their one shot at stopping them. As they reached the hatch, Ilara placed her hand on the artifact, focusing on it with all her strength. The energy surged through her, and the air around them seemed to crackle with power. The ship's shields flickered as the artifact activated, sending a pulse of energy that disabled the warship's defenses. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the ground rumbled, and the ship began to shake. Ilara and Rykar exchanged a look, their hearts pounding. They had done it. The ship was vulnerable. They climbed quickly, reaching the top of the warship's hull. Ilara's mind raced as she prepared to use the artifact one final time. This would be their last chance to stop the Tren, and if it failed, they would all be lost. "Ready?" Ilara asked, her voice steady, despite the fear surging in her chest. Rykar nodded. "Ready?" With a deep breath, Ilara activated the artifact once more. The energy surged, and the Tren warship began to disintegrate, its weapons and engines losing power. The massive ship faltered in midair, then began to plummet toward the surface. Ilara and Rykar jumped to the side, narrowly avoiding the explosion that followed. The warship crashed to the ground, its once unstoppable force now reduced to rubble. The immediate danger was over. Ilara turned to Rykar, her breath coming in short gasps. They had done it. Together, they had saved the planet. The Tren were not defeated, but their threat was no longer imminent. Rykar stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "What now?" he asked, his voice softer now. Ilara looked up at the burning wreckage of the warship, then back at Rykar. "Now, we work together," she said, her voice firm with conviction. "Humanity and the Trenwi can find a way to live in this galaxy without destroying each other." And for the first time, Rykar nodded in agreement. The city was burning. A sea of red flames reflected off the shattered glass of skyscrapers, jagged skyline that once symbolized humanity's greatest achievements. Now, it was a graveyard, a reminder of everything lost. From above, the alien ships hovered ominously, casting dark shadows over the remnants of the world. The Zalirian Zan advanced alien race had descended on Earth without warning, sweeping through the planet with technology far beyond anything humanity could hope to match. There was no time for diplomacy, no time for hope. They had come to conquer in a small, underground resistance base. Hidden beneath the ruins of what was once New York, Lena Matthews paced back and forth, her face drawn and pale, eyes filled with worry and exhaustion. She was the leader of a small faction of rebels fighting to protect the last bastion of human resistance. Yet, despite their best efforts, they had been losing ground. The Zalirians were relentless, their ships raining down fire, their soldiers ruthless and efficient. The resistance had fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. Lena had seen entire cities wiped out in the blink of an eye. She had watched her comrades fall in battle, their faces grim but determined. They had kept fighting, but now the fight was almost over. The Zalirians had already breached the final defense lines, and soon there would be no more hope left. Lena clenched her fists, her mind racing. What could they do? What more could they possibly fight with? Desperation flooded her thoughts, and she knew the answer. There was one last chance, one final hope. She crossed the room to a dusty communications console. Her fingers trembled as she activated the device, watching the blinking lights. A soft hum filled the room as a connection established. The console flickered, and a strange, deep voice echoed in her ear. "Human, I am Elrax." Lena swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. She had only heard rumors of Elraxa, mysterious alien intelligence who had been observing Earth for centuries, offering aid to those in need. Some said he was a savior. Others called him a manipulator. But what choice did she have now? She had to ask for help. She had to. "Elrax. I need your help." "What?" Her voice was hoarse, desperation creeping in. "We can't hold out much longer. The Zilirians. They're going to destroy us. Please save us." The voice on the other end was calm, almost unnervingly so. "You wish for my help, human?" "Yes," she replied, her voice growing stronger. "We're on the brink of extinction. If you don't intervene, we'll be wiped out. I'm begging you, save us." There was a long pause. For a moment, Lena thought the connection had been cut. But then Elrax spoke again. "I can offer you the means to survive, to defeat the Zalirians, but ... His voice trailed off, as if considering something. "There is always a price. Are you willing to pay it?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of the price. There were always rumors, whispers of terrible costs that came with Elrax's help, but she had no choice. She couldn't stand by and watch her people die. They had already lost too much. "What is the price?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. "That is not for you to know until you have passed the trials," Elrax replied. "The trials will determine if your species is worthy of survival. If you succeed, you will have the power to fight back, to defeat the Zilirians. If you fail..." Lena felt a chill crawl down her spine. "If we fail? If you fail, you will die. All of you. The Zilirians will finish what they started, and your species will be erased." The weight of Elrax's words hung in the air like a heavy shroud. The future of humanity, her people, her comrades, rested on the edge of a knife. It was a gamble, perhaps the greatest gamble of all. But what choice did she have? If they didn't take this chance, they would be wiped out anyway. "We'll do it," Lena said, her voice firm, though doubt gnawed at her insides. "We'll take the trials. We'll do whatever it takes to survive." There was a pause, then a soft, almost amused tone in Elrax's voice. "Very well. The trials will begin shortly. Prepare yourselves." The connection was cut, and Lena stood there for a moment, her heart racing. She had made the decision. She had no idea what the trials would be, no idea what price they would have to pay. But it was the only choice left. She turned to face the room, where the rest of her resistance fighters were waiting. "We have one last chance," she said, her voice carrying a note of urgency. "Elrax has agreed to help us, but we have to pass the trials. We have to prove we're worthy of survival." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. "The trials. What does that even mean?" someone asked, their voice filled with skepticism. "I don't know," Lena admitted, her tone grim. "But we don't have a choice. If we don't take this chance, we're dead." There was a moment of silence as the group absorbed her words. Then, slowly, one by one, they nodded. They had already seen so much death, so much destruction. They were willing to try anything to survive. "Let's do it," one of the fighters said, a fire lighting in their eyes. "We've come this far. We'll face whatever comes next," Lena nodded. "Prepare yourselves. The trials are about to begin." As the hours passed, Lena and her group made their preparations. They moved quickly, gathering supplies, checking their weapons, mentally steeling themselves for whatever Elrax had planned. But despite their efforts, no one could shake the feeling of dread that hung over them. What kind of trials would they face? What horrors would Elrax put them through? When the time came, Lena gathered her team in the central room of their underground base. The air was thick with tension. Everyone stood in silence, waiting for the next step. Then, without warning, the room began to glow. A strange, shimmering light filled the space, and the floor beneath their feet seemed to shift. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as the world around them seemed to warp. A voice. distant yet omnipresent, filled the room. "Welcome to the first trial, humans. The time for your survival has come." The ground beneath their feet rumbled, and the resistance fighters instinctively raised their weapons. But Lena's gaze was fixed ahead, where the light was converging. She knew this was just the beginning. Whatever came next, they had to be ready. There was no turning back now. The light dissolved, and the world around them shifted. One moment, Lena and her group were standing in the quiet, dimly lit underground base. The next, they were standing on a barren, rocky landscape. A cold wind blew through the air, carrying with it the scent of something alien, something foreign. The horizon stretched endlessly in every direction, a flat, lifeless wasteland. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she scanned her surroundings. Where are we? She barely had time to think before a voice filled the empty air, the same voice that had spoken to them earlier. "This is the first trial, humans. Welcome to the wasteland. In this trial, you will be tested on your ability to make choices. Some choices will bring you closer to victory. Others will bring you closer to death." The group was silent, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. They had no idea what they were supposed to do, what was coming next, or how the trial would unfold. But one thing was clear: they needed to survive. Lena took a deep breath and turned to her team. "Stay together," she ordered, trying to sound confident. "We don't know what's going to happen, but we face it together. We make it through this, or we don't make it at all." The others nodded, their faces hard with determination. They had fought side by side through endless battles, but this was different. It wasn't just about weapons or fighting. This trial was going to test something much deeper. A sudden, sharp noise cut through the silence, a low, rumbling growl. From the distance, figures began to appear on the horizon, moving fast. At first, they looked like shadows, indistinct and far away. But as they drew closer, Lena's eyes widened. The creatures were unlike anything she had ever seen. Their bodies were massive and armored, with spiny legs and clawed arms that scraped the ground as they moved. Their faces were twisted and cruel, their eyes glowing with an unnatural, eerie light. There was no doubt they were dangerous. "What are those things?" one of the fighters whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Lena replied, her mind racing. "But we need to figure out what to do before they get here." No. The creatures advanced, and the team instinctively raised their weapons. Lena's mind whirled. They couldn't just blindly attack. If they made the wrong decision, they could end up walking right into Elrox's trap. The voice had said that some choices led to victory and others to death. Suddenly, the voice echoed in the air again, sending a chill down their spines. "You are faced with a choice. These creatures are not enemies in the traditional sense. You may choose to fight them, or you may attempt to communicate. The creatures have a weakness. Will you seek it out, or will you take the path of destruction?" Lena stared at the creatures. They were getting closer, their growls louder. If they attacked, there was no guarantee they would survive. But if they tried to communicate and failed, they would surely be killed. The choice was impossible. Lena, one of the fighters, spoke up. "What should we do?" She swallowed hard, struggling to think clearly. "We'll try to communicate," she said finally, her voice steady but uncertain. "We have no other choice. If we fight without understanding them, we risk everything. Let's see if we can find a way to survive this without bloodshed." The team hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. They lowered their weapons slightly but kept them ready, just in case. Slowly, they advanced toward the creatures, who had now stopped in their tracks. Their eyes glowed brighter, watching the humans with a strange curiosity. Lena raised her hands, palms open, in an attempt to show peace. "We don't want to fight," she called out. "We're not your enemies. We just want to understand." The creatures didn't move, and for a moment it seemed like the world was holding its breath. Lena could feel her heart racing. Was this the right decision? Were they walking into a trap? Then, one of the creatures stepped forward. Its claws clicked against the ground as it moved, and it made a strange low noise, almost like a grunt. Lena froze, wondering if it would attack. But instead, the creature bent its head down, its glowing eyes never leaving her. "You seek peace," the creature's voice echoed in her mind, low and strange. "But peace comes at a price." Lena's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaky but strong. "To pass this trial, you must prove you are worthy of peace," the creature continued. "You must give up something of great value. The choice is yours. What will you sacrifice to save your people?" The question hit Lena like a punch to the gut. Sacrifice? She glanced around at her team, their faces filled with confusion and fear. What could they possibly give up? They had already lost so much. What more could they sacrifice? The creature waited for her answer, its gaze unblinking. Lena's mind raced. I don't know," she whispered, her heart heavy. "I don't know what we have left to give." The creature's eyes flickered with an unreadable emotion. "Then you fail." Before Lena could react, the ground beneath them shook violently. The sky darkened, and the creatures suddenly advanced, their claws outstretched. It was a trap. Lena had made the wrong choice. She had failed the trial, but before the first blow landed, the creature stopped. They all froze in place, staring at something behind Lena and her group. A second voice filled the air, this one darker, colder. "You have failed. And yet there is hope. For you see, the true test is not simply survival. It is sacrifice." Lena's eyes widened as she turned to face the voice. A figure was materializing before Hertal, cloaked in darkness, with glowing eyes. It was Elrax. He was watching them, amused. "The first trial was to test your heart, humans," Elrax continued, his voice echoing in their minds. "The creatures you encountered were not your enemies. They were a reflection of your own nature, how you handle fear, how you confront the unknown. Your failure to make the necessary sacrifice cost you victory. But there is still hope. The next trial will be harder, and the price will be steeper." Lena felt a knot form in her stomach. The first trial had been about choice, about understanding the creatures and learning to choose wisely. But now she knew they had failed. They hadn't been willing to sacrifice anything, and that weakness had cost them. The creatures dispersed, disappearing into the distance, their growls fading into silence. Elrax's form shimmered before them one last time. "Prepare yourselves," he warned. "The next trial will be even more difficult. I suggest you learn from your mistakes." The world shifted again. The wasteland disappeared, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Lena's heart raced as she realized that whatever came next, they had to be ready. There was no room for hesitation. They had to survive. They had no other choice.